Hey guys, today I'm in Manhattan and I'm going to be doing one of my New York City stories live for a change. Now I normally prefer to do the stories from a studio setting, but I feel pretty comfortable that we're going to manage this one live. The first place we're going to start off with is the building right opposite, the one that says City MD. Back in 1910, this building here used to be the Jefferson Theater. Now, it was torn down in 1999 and it remained an empty lot for got to be about 15 years, I think, if not longer. Now, the Jefferson Theater was a vaudeville theatre, and it featured such acts as the Marx Brothers, Mae West, Jack Benny, Fred Allen. In fact, the famous comedian George Burns called it the toughest house in New York. It became an RKO cinema from the 30s to the 60s, and then in the 1970s it showed horror and kung fu triple features, then hosted an infamous after-hours club in the early 80s. Like I said, it was demolished in 99 and stood empty for about 15 years, but they finally have a new building up there. Now right next door, where it says Columbia, that used to be the home of Movie Star News, run by the king of the pin-ups, Irving Klaw, and his sister Paula, who sold cheesecake and bondage photos featuring burlesque dancers such as Blaze Star, Tempest Storm, Lily Sincere, not to mention Betty Page. The actual photography studio was on the 3rd floor, and the Movie Star News occupied the bottom floor. In fact, Marilyn Monroe once came here to meet with the photographer of Irving Klaw, a lady by the name of Bunny Yeager. Now, originally they opened Movie Star News right here, number 209. They opened it as a used bookstore. And what happened was, back in the early 1950s, all of the studios used to be down on 11th Avenue. And what Irving Klaw would do, he would get the publicity stills that were being thrown away by the movie studios. And he made a lucrative business out of selling publicity stills of famous stars. So much so that they went over to the opposite side of the street when they improved in life. What was really ironic was that in later years, when the movie studios realized they needed the stills, they would actually have to rent them from Irving Klaw. Anyway, the king of the pin-up, Irving Klaw, and his sister used to run Movie Star News at the building right across the street there. Now, I want to cross over the road if I can, but it doesn't look likely. So I'll walk up to the signal, as you should do anyway. Unless it lets me run over right now. Ah, dagnabbit. Had to be a cop as well, didn't it? Can you believe that? Now, the building on the corner that you see is a restaurant. That place used to be Disco Donut. It was like a diner. Now, Disco Donut featured in the movie Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro and Jodie Foster. But I'll be doing that video in a different video, which I'll put the link in the description for you. But above the diner, there was a two-story house, I guess you call it. And that hosted Carmelita's reception house. The audience participation play, Tony and Tina's Wedding, that was hosted in Carmelita's reception house. Now, the big building right behind it, that used to be the Palladium, the famous rock club in New York. And what would happen when bands would come in that weren't particularly big at the time, they would stay at Carmelita's reception house. And in fact, the B-52s stayed there when they first came to New York. Now, if this truck would just get out of the way, right on this side of the building, it's not the same building, they actually tore it down. But that used to be Tammany Hall, which was the corrupt New York political organization. The 1868 Democratic Convention took place in the building that used to be there. I'll put a picture in the video, of course. And on the bottom floor, there used to be a place called Tony Pastor's New 14th Street Theater, a popular vaudeville venue from 1881 until 1908, where stars like Lillian Russell and Sophie Tucker performed. Harry Houdini played here with his wife Bess in 1895. Tony Pastor, the guy who owned the theatre, he basically is the guy who created vaudeville. And many famous people have graced the doors of his establishment there over the years. Many of them have been forgotten over time. But aside from Harry Houdini, people such as Buster Keaton and Weaver and Fields also performed here. It may interest you, but I also did a graveyard tour in New York, and Harry Houdini and Joe Weaver of Weaver and Fields are buried in the same cemetery. And again, I'll put a link to that video down in the description as well. So that's part one of my tour of 14th Street. There's going to be other videos coming up in the 14th Street series. And now I'm going to do the movie filming location of Taxi Driver, which I'm really excited about.